Hello everybody, what is going on? It is Voodoo here, and welcome to another episode of Voodoo's Verdict, which is my ongoing series of honest and thorough game reviews where I take a game that I have recently beaten and give you my honest and thorough thoughts on the game, break it down for you, give you the ins and outs about the game, what you need to know, and then ultimately wrap it up with a score from 1 to 10 that I feel is very fair and accurately represents the game. And today's episode we will be focusing on a game that was a brand new IP that was released in October of last year, 2012, and because of its success and popularity and the positive feedback that the game received, it has now been confirmed it's going to be a new franchise and will have upcoming sequels to the original game. And the game that we're going to be talking about today is Dishonored. And this is a game that was made by Arkane Studios, which did some work on Bioshock 2. If I remember right, I believe they were responsible for the level design of the game, and also, kind of some of the graphical stylings of Bioshock 2. So they made their own game called Dishonored. And what is Dishonored? Dishonored is a game where you are placed in the shoes of a man named Corvo Attano, and you are the royal protector of the Empress of this fictional kingdom of Dunwall, and your job is the only job you have is to protect the Empress. And very early on in the game, this isn't really a spoiler because this is how they advertise the game, the Empress is assassinated, basically in the opening cutscenes of the game, and you are framed for her assassination by these mystery men who actually did kill her. They frame you and broadcast it throughout the kingdom of Dunwall that you, Corvo, her royal protector, betrayed her and murdered her. They also steal the Empress's daughter, who is Emily, whom you have a strong attraction to. Not in a weird way like that, just, you have a good relationship with her, the two of you are close, and they kidnap her away and throw you in prison. And that's where the name of the game, obviously Dishonored, comes from. And for the rest of the game, you as Corvo, it's your job to obviously get out of imprisonment and find Emily, get her back, seek revengeance on the people who killed the Empress, and clear your name and get Emily on the throne as the rightful heir to her mother, to be the new Empress of Dunwall. And that's more or less a general overview of the game. There's a lot of backstory with this game, which is very neat. Similar to Bioshock, how they try to give a lot of backstory. There's a plague, an epidemic going around the kingdom of Dunwall called the Rat Plague, which is infecting all of the citizens, and it was really a crisis before the Empress was murdered, and it continues to be throughout the game, where these rats will bite and infect people and basically turn them into like zombies. They walk around aimlessly, and people are getting sick all over the place, and the rat plague is a real concern. There's also a lot of, books and stuff hidden around the world that you can pick up and read, and there's a lot of backstory to the game. The graphic style of the game is very interesting. The graphic style, from what I read, is supposed to represent or be reminiscent of like an oil painting. So if you've ever seen an oil painting, that's the kind of graphics in the game. It's a little bit unique. I feel like it's hit or miss. I feel like some people are going to really like it and it adds character and uniqueness to the game. Other people are going to think that it's ugly. I don't really love or hate it. I think that it's unique to the game. So I think that it's neat that they did that because it's kind of unique to this game and gives it some character. I don't love it, but I also don't hate it. But it's a pretty interesting world that they've developed here. They also have this mechanic of a fuel source that's here in Dunwall called whale oil, which is self-explanatory, and they use this to power up different machinery in the city, mainly security. They use it to power these things called light bridges, which are, barricades that you can't walk through or you get fried. These crazy walking mechs called they're called tall boys, and they walk around, and it's a pretty neat environment in the game Dishonored. As far as the gameplay of Dishonored, there's a lot to talk about here because Dishonored is more or less two completely different games in one. One side is the very action-oriented, kind of your usual first-person shooter kind of way, where you will have, you know, different weapons, very much like Bioshock 2, actually, because, you know, they worked on it. You can dual wield, and in your right hand you will always be carrying a sword, and then in your left hand you can have different weapons. You can also equip magical powers, which we'll get into a little bit later, that you can use. So you can dual wield, and you can go the route of attacking and killing everyone, of killing guards. The level setup is very similar to how it is in Bioshock, where you have little individual kind of mini open world stages. So if you've played Bioshock 1, Bioshock 2, it's set up very similar to that, where you'll have little mini open world stages that you can go around this little one area and do a bunch of different things, and then, you know, move on to another area. So it's set up like that, and as I said, one path, you just go around killing everything. You can use your weapons. There's lethal, you know, magic abilities that you can use. You just basically go around tearing people to shreds. The other route, which is the route that I chose to go, is the stealth route, the more or less non-lethal route, where you go around choking people out, playing it very stealthy, using completely different kinds of magical abilities catered towards stealth instead of combat. You know, choking soldiers out, dragging them around corners, hiding them. And you might ask, well, what's really the reason of these two branches? Well, there's something in the game as a mechanic called chaos. And as you kill people, you build high chaos. And depending if you have high or low chaos, the world will actually change. If you have high chaos, the world will change and be a lot uglier. There'll be a lot more rats running around carrying rat plague, which actually groups of rats can't attack you and hurt you, and so there'll be more rats. There'll be more of what they call weeping, which are basically the zombie infected people of the rat plague. There'll be more of those walking around the world, and it will just be a lot darker environment if you do the high chaos lethal route. If you do the stealth route, you'll have low chaos, and there won't be as many rats, there won't be as much weeping, and it'll be a little bit easier for you to progress without dealing with all these other complications. And you also get two different endings based on whether or not you have high or low chaos. And there's pivotal choices through the game that aid you, you know, in going one way or another with your chaos. There's pivotal characters that you can either choose to kill or to not kill. But the really cool thing about Dishonored is that you can play Dishonored the way that you want to play. There's about 1 million different ways to do each and every objective. So, you know, to get around a simple security or one of these wall of lights past guards, you can do it so many different ways. You can do the lethal approach, as I said. You can go down there, you can start shooting people, kill a bunch of people with different weapons, with certain magical abilities that allow you to just tear through enemies. You can go do that and, you know, go destroy the light wall and just walk right through it and be done. You can take the stealth approach using other forms of magic, which I know more about because that's the route I went. There's different forms of magic such as possession, where you can actually, you know, these skills have levels, and at the basic level you can possess things like rats, and you can find tunnels that you can walk through as a rat to get to a certain area that maybe you can sneak past the guards that way with a rat. There's a very crucial ability in the game called Dark Vision that allows you to basically see the enemies through walls and shows you their line of sight. It's very similar to that mode in Batman, the Batman Arkham games, I forget what it's called, where you can go into that mode and you can see the enemies and see which way they're looking. And you can sneak up behind them that way and choke them out. You can shoot them with sleep darts from afar if you want to do the non-lethal route. You know, there was one part of the game where I had to get past a light bridge, and I could either, you know, there was a bunch of different things. I could either go sneak around and, you know, there were tall boys guarding this this wall of light, and I could either sneak around and rewire this switch with a rewire tool to turn off the tall boys. I could sneak around and try to find the whale oil that was powering the wall of light, take that out, shut down the wall of light, or I could climb up onto a rooftop, drop down onto a cart that actually went past the enemies and hide in the cart, and you could ride the cart past and jump off and disable the wall of light once you were past the enemies. So that's what's really cool about Dishonored, is there's a million different ways to do each and every thing, and I think that that's really cool. You know, that you have that kind of freedom, and I really enjoy games that give you the freedom to do this. You know, there are collectibles in the world that you can go around and find. Two main ones will be runes and bone charms that you're always going to be looking out for. And actually you have in your inventory a human heart that you use, and the human heart somehow shows you where these runes and bone charms are. Runes, as you go through and find runes, once you have enough runes, that's what allows you to buy upgrades of your magical abilities. Bone charms are basically like perks. You can find bone charms and equip a certain number of bone charms that will then allow you to perform certain things. If you hear a train horn, I apologize. There's a train going by, but yeah, you can find these bone charms and equip them, and they'll give you special perks and bonuses. So those are throughout the game. There's money hidden throughout the game, things like that. So the gameplay is really good as far as, you know, giving you the option of free roam to do what you want. I have to check the time. I have to be careful because this camera, when it reaches its filming limit, okay, I have plenty of time. When it reaches its filming limit, it cuts off recording and doesn't tell me. So I've had some videos where I've just kept talking and the camera's been off and I've missed half of what I said. But anyway, I have plenty of time. So yeah, it's very open with how you can do things. So with all that being said, you know, it sounds like a pretty good game, and it is a good game. But it's not perfect, and there are things that I have problems with that I need to discuss with you. And unfortunately, the thing is I feel like I can only review really half the game, because it's so different to play as the killing, you know, lost my words. To play like the lethal branch rather than the non-lethal, because when you play lethal, you get completely different, you know, you would purchase completely different abilities, you would use your weapons, you would use a bunch of different things that I didn't use in my stealth playthrough because I didn't need anything related to combat. So there were a lot of abilities that I didn't buy and things I didn't equip because I didn't need them, you know. I use this stuff to help with stealth. But I will do my best, and the things I have complaints about are mainly probably with the stealth, but I'll do my best. So one of the major gripes I have about the game is the controls. Now keep in mind, I'm playing this on the Xbox 360. The game is of course available on PC, which has more precise controls. But for the Xbox 360, I found the controls to be clunky. Especially with a certain ability called Blink, which is an ability that you get that allows you to teleport. You can use it to climb up, you know, on a balcony. You can use it to jump forward. You can use it to... Wow, that train horn is really loud. You can use it to jump up on rooftops and things like that. And it's very, very useful in stealth because you're looking for windows, breaks in the guards, and you use this Blink ability to quickly teleport up to a rooftop when no one's looking, or teleport past somebody when they're not looking. Unfortunately, they failed to put a locking system on the Blink. So when you're trying to teleport up to a rooftop or something like that, it's this little minute movement of the control sticks to find that certain sweet spot where it shows you where you're going to go, and you know, when you're going to climb a tower, it shows like an arrow. So you have to move the thing to find that sweet spot where it shows an arrow, so then when you go, it'll actually have you climb the building. Because if it doesn't show the arrow, you'll teleport and you'll just hit the side of the building and fall off. Even if you hit the ledge, he won't climb up it, he'll just fall off like an idiot. And it becomes a real problem later in the game when the stealth and there's more enemies and you're trying to do it, because you may really need to do it at a moment's notice to try to get past these guards. And because there's no locking system, basically like it won't lock onto a ledge, you have to keep moving till you find that little millimeter of space where it allows you to climb a ledge or whatever. It screwed me over so many times to where I would have a break in the guards, I'd make a run for it and try to teleport up to a rooftop before they turned around. But because there's no locking system, there was no way to do it quickly. I was just fumbling around with the sticks trying to get that little arrow so that I could teleport up to a rooftop, and by the, they'd either turn around or see me because I couldn't do it fast enough, or it would show the little arrow and then I would release it and it would move like a millimeter and the arrow would go away, so I would teleport up, hit the building, and fall to the ground where they all saw me. So that really bugged me. There's another thing with the controls where if you sneak up behind somebody, you can hit and hold right bumper to choke them out. Many, many times during this game, I would go up behind somebody and it would give me the prompt to choke them out, and I would hit right bumper, but as soon as I did that, like, for whatever reason, the prompt would vanish again. It was one of those sweet spot things where you had to get in that sweet spot to where it gave you the prompt, and if the guard moved just a little bit, you might not be in that sweet spot, and when the prompt isn't there, right bumper is to block with your sword. So I would walk right up behind somebody, they would be there, I'd hit right bumper, and as soon as I did that, instead of choking the guy out, my guy would go like this with his sword and block, making noise, alerting the guy, and I had to reload the save because he saw me. So the controls, I think, were a real issue with the game, and it really bugged me. Another big problem I have with the game is, for the most part, when you're doing the stealth playthrough, it's fair. There's a fair number of enemies, but it's not overwhelming. It's nothing that you can't really handle if you take your time and plan it out. And there's usually different ways to get past people, like with the rat possession, when you get actually a better ability of the possession, you can actually possess humans and walk around with them for a short time. You can get an ability that slows time. So there's ways to get around these enemies. But starting with like the third to last level of the game, the stealth was nearly impossible because they would put so many enemies in one area at one time all over the map that there was really no way that I could see you being able to walk through that or get through that with any of your abilities without being seen. It was insanely difficult, and the last 3 levels of the game I got really, really, really frustrated because of how just ridiculous the amount of enemies were, to the point where you get to the point where the only way to beat it is really to just kind of sprint through the enemies, alert them, try to get into a room, and then when they chase you in there, kill like 5 or 6 people, because you don't have to avoid killing completely to get the low chaos. If you only kill a few people, you'll still get the low chaos ending. And that's what I wound up having to do at the end of the game, because it was just not possible to get through this massive amount of enemies, and of course they're all looking every single way. There's no natural breaks in the enemies, and then when you add in the clunky controls and make it difficult to do the teleporting with the blink, it becomes nearly impossible. And it's like, if you're gonna have a game that you can play either way, you gotta make it fair. I mean, if you're doing the low chaos playthrough and you have low chaos at that point in the mission, there should be less enemies, because the game should recognize that you're doing the stealth playthrough, you have the low chaos, they should reduce the number of enemies. If you want to put that many enemies there when you have high chaos and you're slaughtering everybody, that's fine, I have no problem with that, because if you're killing people, then the only way to make that more challenging is to add more enemies. But if you're doing the stealth playthrough, you have low chaos, it would make sense to me that they would reduce the number of enemies there to at least make it fair for the people doing stealth to actually do it without alerting anyone. But I didn't find it doable most of the time. I got really frustrated, and by the end of the game, I just wanted to beat the game. I didn't want to play it anymore because I was so frustrated with being seen all the time, having to continuously reload saves. Because I kept being seen, and with the clunky controls, I got very frustrated and just wanted it to end, okay? So those are my complaints with the game. The only other complaint that I do have is with the ending. Because, for me, I played this game for about 15 hours. Now, the reason was because I was doing the stealth playthrough, so I had to take my time through the whole game. I reloaded I don't know how many hundreds of times because I would get seen by somebody, I would have to reload and go back and try to do it over. That's why it took me 15 hours. But it took me 15 hours. Like I said, there's critical decisions you can make about important characters in the game. I chose pretty much to keep them all alive. And you expect at the ending then to be an in-depth ending explaining really what happens to all these different characters that you spared or killed, or what are the consequences of that or anything like that. Unfortunately, the ending is extremely short. It's about, I don't know, 15 to 20 seconds long, really. That's how long it is. And it doesn't do anything like that. It doesn't go in-depth at all. It's very short, very bland ending, and it's an ending that you're like, okay, I could have seen that from 100 miles away. It's not a great ending, and they don't go into depth and explain the ramification of your choices, and it really feels like a cop-out. Like they got to the ending of the game, and they just didn't put the work in to make a good ending. Do a time check one more time. Alright, I'm quickly running out of time, actually, so let me wrap this up. So the ending was a problem. Now, with all that being said, overall, what do I think of Dishonored? What is my score? I think Dishonored is a really good attempt for being a first genre of an IP. I thought it was a really good game. I like the fact that there's a lot of replayability. This game screams for 2 playthroughs, 1 on each of the chaos. Good gameplay for the most part. Enjoyed it. It's unique. I'm glad that they went out and took a risk instead of just making another sequel. So they get props for doing that. But the game is not perfect by any means. There's problems with the controls. There's problems with it just being too ruthless in the last few levels when you're doing the low chaos. And the ending leaves a lot to be desired. But all that being said, overall, I think Dishonored is actually a pretty good game. And I'm going to give Dishonored an 8 out of 10. I think that, like I said, it's really good. But I think that there's things that hold it back from being any higher. Things that they need to correct. And hopefully with future iterations of this franchise, they will correct these things like the control problems and, making the game a little bit more doable on the stealth playthrough later in the game. Alright? So, those are my thoughts on Dishonored. An 8 out of 10. A good game for a first attempt. I can't wait for more and hope that they make them even bigger and better than this one. I definitely think that it's worth a playthrough if you're looking for a good game to play. So, those are my 2 cents. Those are my thoughts. I'm Voodoo51292. Thanks for watching this episode of Voodoo's Verdict, and I hope to see you again on future episodes of the show. So, thanks, and peace out.